excited for a number of different reasons. Welcome back to Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM. We're going to talk with Andrew Langer, president of the Institute for Liberty and host of the Langer Cast, powered by Randy's Electric. Got a really, really busy hour. We're going to be speaking with Senator Eric Pratt just after 7:20 this morning. He's got a school safety bill that's working through committee today. We'll get details on that. Also joining us in studio, candidate for the House and CD1, Jim Hagedorn. Will be joining us in the studio, along with Minnesota GOP Chairwoman Jennifer Carnahan, talking about the Lincoln Reagan dinner. We'll get into a bit of Tim Pawlenty announcing his gubernatorial run. He's going to be joining us in studio on tomorrow's show. Before we get to Langer, though, Sam, guess what we get to do?
True tweets.
True tweets. True tweets. Yeah, yeah.
True tweets.
True tweets. True tweets. What now?
Oh,
Just now, Drew tweeted, "I am New Orleans'd out." Just like the end of his Drew tweets parody song. He said, "I am New Orleans'd out. What a fun week. Beyond ready to get back to my own bed and my own shower, though. Hashtag not one good night's sleep. Hashtag not one good shower."
Aw, that's a bummer. We get a whole week of not...
Why weren't we included in that? He's looking forward to getting back to his bed and his own shower, but there's no looking forward to getting back to...
No John and Sam.
No, in there at all. I feel a little bit slighted.
I didn't even think about that.
I know. Yeah, I know I would, because I just take everything so personally.
Now I'm sad.
Joining us as he does every Monday, very pleased to welcome to the show, Andrew Langer. Good morning, sir. How are we doing this morning?
We're doing great. Welcome my family back from their spring break, and they're a little jet lagged out.
Well, hopefully that they were more excited to come back to you than Drew is apparently coming back to us.
Well, it's I get that. It's funny. For the longest time, there was no free market limited government think tank in New Orleans, and I didn't know, or in Louisiana, and it wasn't until I actually visited New Orleans that I understood why. You go there and you're like, now I understand why no work ever gets done.
Right?
It is an amazing city, but yes, like Vegas.
Yeah.
After a couple of days, you're done.
I was wondering if it resembled if Vegas had the same type of situation where there's no think tank there either, because why bother? I remember the one year, I think you were there. You were there for the Ride Online convention back in 2012, right, in Las Vegas? Yeah, yes. This was wow. This was when, and folks, what you have to understand is, at that time, Vegas was only, a 3-hour drive? How far away was it from Tucson? Oh, from Tucson, it was about 5 to 7 hours. Wasn't that bad?
5 to 7 hours, depending on how you would drive.
Yeah.
So John and Drew had listener fans who were coming up to Vegas to party with Drew and John, and it turned into a real mess.
Sam, there are some things that people have to, like, on a list of, like, your bucket list items. If it's possible, going to Las Vegas with a group of conservative, politically minded individuals is a very unique experience. Let me just...
Well, and that was, of course, the Ride Online that led to, as I believe, a number of marriages breaking up. I'm sorry. Okay, very inside baseball, everybody.
Hey, real quick before we get to the important news, and this movie's been kind of talked about among us on the show. I haven't seen it yet, but can you talk a little bit about this Stalin movie that everybody keeps raging about?
Oh my God, I was enthralled by this movie. Now, this is a dark comedy.
Okay.
And it is a dark comedy that is incredibly historically accurate, just in terms of the characters and the power plays and what was going on. Essentially, it is a story. Stalin dies, and the Politburo is left scrambling, and it is about the struggle between Lavrenti Beria, who was the head of the Russian secret police at the time, and Nikita Khrushchev. And this is, the Stalinist pogroms are in full swing. And one of the plot points, one of the major plot points is, Stalin has a stroke, but in the previous 6 months, they have quite literally killed almost all of the doctors in Moscow. and in Leningrad as well, out of something called the Doctor's Plot. Stalin was paranoid, thought the doctors were trying to kill him. And so there's this mad scramble to find a doctor. It is just incredible. And Jason Isaacs from Star Trek Discovery and from The Patriot and Harry Potter, he steals the show as Field Marshal Zhukov. But you've got Steve Buscemi as Nikita Khrushchev. It really is just a fantastic movie. If you have any interest in this and love dark comedy, go and see this movie. It is just terrific.
Is it funny as it relates to politics and the source material, or is it just funny? Is The Death of Stalin just funny in and of itself, being a dark comedy for when?
No. I mean, no. It's funny insofar as the source material. I mean, and quite literally, you've got this interplay where you look at this, and the big thing with Russia was rehabilitation, and then of course the kind of Orwellian revisionist history that would go on. And so where you have Lavrenti Beria, who had been in charge of the mass executions for 30 years, stealing the reformist ideas of others so that he could set himself up. I mean, there is, at one point, Steve Buscemi of Nikita Khrushchev says, wait a minute, you've been locking up half the population for decades, and you're going to be the hero? I mean, it's very, very funny that way. So and then at various points in time where they engage in this Orwellian double think, you said this, so therefore you must be X. Really, if you have any interest in the dangers of socialism and Marxist-Leninist theory and how this can lead to the kind of violence that we've all been talking about, this is the movie to see.
Talking with Andrew Langer, president of the Institute for Liberty, again powered by Randy's Electric. All right, let's get into this. And I got a question for you up front. But
sure.
for those that missed it, President Donald Trump on Sunday, this comes out of the Associated Press, condemned a mindless chemical attack in Syria that killed women and children, called the Syrian president Assad an animal, delivered a rare personal criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin for supporting the Damascus government. First off, I think a lot of people are a bit confused. These chemical attacks have continued to occur since we, just over a year ago, ordered the dozens of cruise missiles to be fired at the Syrian airbase. This one was particularly bad, and it's getting a lot of media attention, and deservedly so. And then overnight, there was an attack launched into Syria. Russia's claiming that came from Israel, because we've denied that we've launched an attack yet. And I haven't heard anything apart from that as of yet. Have you? That still seems to be what the working thought is with this this missile attack that took place inside Syria. Correct?
It would, yeah, yes. That is what I've heard as well. I will say this is where this. I'm trying to get it. It's interesting to try to sort of ferret through this narrative, because this is where where the media reporting on every conversation Donald Trump has with Vladimir Putin does a total disservice. This is why Mike Pompeo moving from CIA to state is so important, because our troops have actually engaged with Russian troops in Syria. We've got a very serious situation going on the ground there. And so as we are playing, and we've taken a much harder line stance on Russia in recent weeks than a lot of folks realize. It's not just that, we've gone out and we've now personally sanctioned oligarchs in the last week. It's not just that we've expelled diplomats.
Right.
It's not just that we were meeting, John. Last Tuesday, the president sat down and had a closed-door session with the presidents of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, the Baltic states. All of this is part and parcel of a real show of strength vis-a-vis Russia, and part of it, no small measure, has to do with what's going on the ground in Syria.
So, and I get you're kind of answering my question, but I'll be a little bit more direct with what happened in this chemical attack. How much of this has to do with Putin and Russia and the things you mentioned, not just the expelling of the diplomats and the sort of exposure that we now know, or the details that we now know of the meddling of Russia. How much of this potentially has to do with the continued ongoing desire by Putin to sow discord and chaos. I mean, you look at the potential that we have with North Korea and the talk of denuclearization, and I can't help but look at this as just an extension of the same type of tactics that Putin's been using during the election, after the election, and now. Is that a fair assessment?
No, listen, I think that's a very fair assessment. Listen, remember, right, the flip side of any action is reaction. So last week, Trump meets with these leaders. They go after and they impose sanctions on these oligarchs. Now, they haven't done what David Satter, who's a really great author, is suggesting, of going off and freezing Putin's assets. But nevertheless, they've gone that distance. And now you have this attack in Syria. So, yeah, I think there is something there. Plus, I think you're correct, right? We're seeing, I mean, even with, yes, we are rattling sabers trade-wise with the Chinese. But at the same time, the Chinese have stepped up markedly in terms of what's going on in the Korean Peninsula. The U.S. is pushing back against, the Russia power vacuum filling efforts in a way that they haven't seen in almost a decade now. And that's got to be frustrating to Putin, who's going to react in a variety of ways.
Statement by the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, John McCain, in regards to the attack, saying President Trump was quick to call out Assad, along with the Russian Iranian government. The question is whether he'll do anything about it. The president responded decisively when Assad used chemical weapons last year. He should do so again and demonstrate that Assad will pay a price for his war crimes. And this is, I think for military experts, and I'm curious to get your opinion. Obviously the measured response that we did last year, if you want to call it measured, in launching that missile attack didn't stop what happened just recently with this most recent attack. The problem is escalation. The problem is weighing a measured attack against making things worse in the region. We can't outright get rid of Assad. That's not good either. Is there a military response, in your opinion, that's beyond just sort of a slap on the wrist, but doesn't escalate things and make things worse on the military front with Russia?
Well, on the military front with Russia, I think Israel launching a missile attack on Syria is probably one of the ways of doing it. So this is the problem with John McCain, and the problem with the Never Trump wing of the Republican Party. First of all, John McCain won't be satisfied unless there are thousands of U.S. troops committed on the ground in Syria. And you and I both know this. For a guy who's experienced the horrors of war, he's awfully interested in making sure that U.S. troops get committed to the ground. And the problem is, of course, as was pointed out to me, in a very painful sort of Twitter war, is that when you commit U.S. troops on the ground, you are committing them, or you are doing things like creating no-fly zones. You are committing U.S. forces to engage directly with Russian forces.
Right.
Now, we've done this. We've been engaging. But what we don't want is to quote the movie Hunt for Red October. That's how you turn a Cold War into a hot war.
Right.
Actually, I guess that's also Charlie Wilson's sport. That's and so that's what you don't want. We don't want all our war. So listen, it's the same reason why despite my suggestion that maybe we put U.S. troops in Kiev in Ukraine. Why you wouldn't want to do that? Because God forbid, the Russians actually invade Kiev, and then you have to do something. But this is the problem, right? Is that McCain says this and completely disregards everything that has been done in the last week to deal with this situation. So,
your phone's breaking up. Your phone's breaking up there, Andrew Langer. You still got you?
Sorry, is that better?
There we go.
I haven't even moved.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Now you're better now.
All right. So, but this is the problem with Never Trumpers is that they don't give the president any breathing room.
Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and let you go here because your phone is breaking up again. But thank you, as always, for the time and the insight this morning, sir. We will talk to you again next week, buddy.
I think we lost it.
Yeah. I think that was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Getting back to this Associated Press article, and put a bit of a period on this commentary. The developments in Syria come as Trump has moved to dramatically scale back U.S. goals in Syria, pushing for a quicker military withdrawal despite resistance from many of his national security advisors. Trump has given no formal order to pull out the 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria or offer a public timetable. Other than to say the U.S. will withdraw soon as the remaining Islamic State fighters are vanquished. Trump has signaled to his advisors that ideally he wants all troops out within 6 months. And look, I want to encourage you, go to use the hashtag TCNT on Twitter, and there's an amazing thread that went up from an individual who's got a lot of insight into what's going on that lays out in a series of tweets the real difficulty with doing anything in Syria beyond just, firing missiles into the region. Andrew Langer seemed to agree, and it's an easy assessment that the strike on the Syrian airbase that took place overnight, probably at the hands of Israeli fighters, was most likely done with our blessing in mind. They were closest to the region to try to send some type of measured response. The problem is that if we continue with our engagement, and I'm not saying that I'm for pulling the troops out, I really don't know what we should do at this point in time. I know that Assad needs to be stopped from using these chemical weapons. All you have to do is look at the images that are shown on TV of the women and the children, and the men who are affected in these chemical attacks that are stuck in the middle of the civil war, and it's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious. He should be stopped. But this is where the difficulty lies, because you are in a, for lack of a better term, in a tough catch-22 situation. You can throw missiles in. We did it last year. Probably a good idea. Hey, we're not going to tolerate this. But again, you're not stopping Assad from doing that, and ousting Assad's not going to help the situation either, because now you created a power vacuum. Nor do we want to go to war with Russia. The bigger takeaway for me right now, and I mentioned it to Andrew Langer, is that if you want a better understanding of what's happening, you need to look, and Drew does a really, really good job of laying this out and continuing to hammer the point on the show. This is Russia's MO. This is what Putin does. Like, when you sit back and go, why does Putin do this? Why does he bother doing this? This is part of how he operates. He wants chaos. He wants discord. He feels like he gets power from having the United States in turmoil, not just on the political front, but in the, social networking front, within the social sphere, and on the military front as well. Right? This is no happenstance that this bad chemical attack occurred right in the middle of not just the U.S., but a coalition of individuals ousting these Russian diplomats. The Rosenstein coming out and talking about these individuals who were affecting social networking and trying to cause chaos during the election, and the fact that we're making headway on North Korea as well. It's all part of his MO. He wants to sow chaos and distrust. 651-989-5855. We'll certainly keep you updated on this story if there's any breaking news in regards to Syria. Next, calling in, we're going to talk with Senator Eric Pratt. Has a school safety bill that's up in committee today, and we're going to give you all the details here on Twin Cities News Talk. Hey, Sam, did you hear that Laura Ingraham is returning to Fox after the cooling off period from her tweet? Also, cooling off period is also means, like in her case, a scheduled vacation.
Conveniently, you're right. Conveniently, she got like a week of spring break.
Well, I think she was already planning on. This is all because of the tweet in which she apologized for the tweet in which she said that the 17-year-old high school student who's now 18, David Hogg, was whining about being rejected to some colleges, which sparked the boycott. And then there was this talk that she had been removed. But I think the reality was she was taking time off anyways. It just happened to coincide at the right time. So she's going back to to work now. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that, the cooling off period. 651-989-5855. It is Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM. Justice and Drew along with Sam. Drew is making his way back from New Orleans. We'll be back in studio with us on tomorrow's show. And joining us right now, we are very pleased to welcome Senator Eric Pratt. Good morning, sir. How are we doing this morning?
Good morning. Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. And I know that we've got school safety bill up in committee today. I have an article here, Senator Eric Pratt. This comes out of the Minnesota Senate Republicans.com back on March 13th. There's a couple of bills in here. You've got SF 3243, districts to use long-term facilities maintenance revenue for remodeling, equipping existing school facilities to increase safety and security of students and staff, and also the SF 2900, allowing schools to modify their emergency drill procedure, among other things. Is this what's going up for committee today, or zero me in on what's going to be discussed today?
Well, there's a number of bills up in committee, and I'm going to have the long-term facilities maintenance bill up today in education finance.
Okay.
You know, school safety's just been a really a top topic for us since we got back to the Capitol with the Parkland shooting happening the week before we went back into session. But, you know, I think when you look at Parkland and you look at Great Mills High School in Maryland, you really see that these schools are soft targets. And yet, you know, since President Trump suggested we harden the target, we're still trying to define what that means.
Right. Well, and I think the schools themselves are the ones, and that's why I like a lot of what you and others are proposing, because it does put the power into the schools themselves, you know, hands. You know, there's this question around, would we be doing this if it wasn't for these events that took place? That being said, I do appreciate the fact that regardless of that question, which I do believe is an important one, at least we're looking at this from the reality is, regardless of what happened, that the schools are soft targets. What can we do to help mitigate that? And that, to me, is the proper approach when we're looking at school safety. Certainly, and certainly better than looking at, you know, further gun control. Let's look at toughening up our schools.
Well, certainly we've been focused on ideas that we think will work. You know, when you look at school safety, and I think this has been part of the confusion, there's a couple of things that really in existing funding that exists. One is the Safe School Levy, and that's $36 that can be levied by a board per student. Now, typically what that goes for is paying operational costs. So that'll help the school pay for the school resource officer. It'll help pay for counselors. Some schools will use it for gang prevention programs. And then you've got the bill that I have up today, long-term facilities maintenance, which is a board levy that's going to go up to $380 per student. And that's really for keeping buildings in good shape, like roofs and other significant repairs.
Okay.
Now, one of the change that I want to make today is to add some short-term additional money to that, $100 per student, so that schools can go out specifically for safety-related items. I spent 12 years on a school board, and I know we've got these projects just listed there, and we're just waiting to get to them and waiting for the funding. Really prioritizing what the most important need is. And you're exactly right. This puts the decision in the hands of local school boards, but also it creates a sense of urgency for local districts to get these projects done.
What kind of feedback are you getting from the schools themselves in working through this process of trying to craft ways to give them the opportunity to go and make the changes that they think are necessary?
You know, really fantastic support. You talked about the fire drill bill. You know, that was a bill that came from one of my local superintendents in trying to make his school safer. He ran into a problem with a 100-year-old law that needed to be updated.
Huh.
And so everybody's on the same page. There are different flavors. I mean, we have Senator Rude's got a grant program for schools to do a safety assessment or security assessment. Senator Abler and I each have a bill that will allow local school districts to increase the amount of that school safety levy for the SROs. That hasn't been updated in 5 years, and schools need the ability to help keep up with those increasing costs. I heard Senator Nelson talk about her aid package last week, which is one-time state funding. And really just Senator Singeman, Senator Rosen looking at mental health. So the House came out with their plan. We're still really working on the details for our plan.
Yeah, we were blessed enough to have Senator Carla Nelson actually was listening to some of the conversation we were having last week and called in to talk a bit about that. I'm talking with Senator Eric Pratt. Sometimes when these events take place, for as horrible as they are, we end up going down this road and examining these particular issues, and maybe they're items that weren't on our radar. I'm curious if when you started looking into this, if there was anything that stuck out to you that you were surprised wasn't perhaps being done already when it comes to school safety.
Well, I think the biggest one is that our school safety money wasn't being used for improving the safety of buildings. Now, a lot of schools, like the district I was part of, we started doing those maintenance, those safety upgrades as we were building new buildings. But a lot of school districts, I'm finding out, haven't been able to do that. They haven't had the construction projects like many of the suburban schools. So really focusing on that piece for me is crucial, making sure that we get, updated entryways, cameras, bulletproof glass. I just met with a group yesterday. They have a glass that can withstand a 50 caliber shell. So, I mean, it's really some fantastic stuff going on.
We'll wrap up on this. There's a quote from this article that I was talking about from you, and I agree. Students won't be able to focus on learning if they don't feel safe in their school buildings. And I'm glad to see that there is a focus there, and that's part of the goal. Because you're right. I mean, students need to have their mind focused on their studies and not focused on their security. And they need to. And I know that sometimes it's the illusion, the perception of safety. But when it comes to our children and their ability to learn, that is something that is important. That they are comfortable and feel safe when they go to school.
Well, thank you, and exactly. We've really got to get teachers back, focused on teaching, and kids focused on learning, and not out protesting.
Right. Right. Let's get our priorities in the right spot. Senator Eric Pratt, I got to let you go. Anything for the listener? Any way the listener can support what it is you're doing, or just to keep an eye on these bills moving through committee?
Keep an eye on these bills moving through committee. You can always reach out to my office if you have any thoughts or questions. Those of us in the legislature, we're not all that smart all the time. Some of the best ideas come from people out in our districts, and so always willing to listen.
Senator Eric Pratt, thank you so much for the time this morning, sir. I hope you have a good rest of your day. It was great talking with you. Joining us in studio next, we'll talk with Minnesota GOP Chairwoman Jennifer Carnahan. We'll give you all the details about the annual Lincoln Reagan dinner, and if you want to attend, it's all coming up on Twin Cities News Talk.
Justice in.
We have almost a mini roundtable thing happening for a Monday.
We do. I didn't even think about that.
That's right. It is Justice and Drew along with Sam. Drew will be back tomorrow. He's currently traveling back from New Orleans, but he'll be back in studio on tomorrow's show. Joining us in studio right now, we are very pleased to welcome not only Minnesota GOP Chairwoman Jennifer Carnahan. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. And also, Jim Hagedorn, running for Minnesota's first congressional seat, has also joined us in studio this morning. Good morning, sir.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in. It's good to meet you. We got a few things that we want to talk about with you during your time in studio. First off, though, Jennifer Carnahan. Boy, busy, right?
There's never a slow day in politics, I'm learning.
Get it? It's so funny because there's so much going on, and Minnesota is such in the spotlight because of so many different races. And we may have talked about this before, but we can go there again real quick because I know we're going to talk about the Lincoln Reagan dinner, which will be a great opportunity to sort of just sit back, relax and get ready for the coming year. But when you took over that role, I mean, not everything had kind of gained momentum yet. I mean, we knew that we were going to have some races and some hotly contested races, but I don't think anybody could have predicted that we would be in the situation we're in with so many different races.
No, I think there are so many dynamics that have shifted since where we were a year ago, but in a very positive way for Republicans in Minnesota.
Yeah.
You know, we always had the governor's seat, you know, the governor's race on the ballot, a U.S. Senate seat, the entire House, the constitutional offices, and the congressional races. But what's changed in the past year is, you know, Senator Al Franken resigns in disgrace. Rick Nolan retires from the 8th Congressional District. So now that gives us two of the biggest pickup opportunities in the country for Congress, for national Republicans. And then obviously the 2 U.S. Senate seats now. I mean, it's basically everything is on the ballot this cycle. And so Minnesota really is at the center of politics on a national level. And what happens here is going to impact the balance of power in Washington, D.C., and we have some incredible opportunities in this state.
Now, we had Vice President Mike Pence came to town. I guess was that a week ago? I guess 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah. And that was a really great event, and we had a chance to see you there. And I know that was part of an ongoing tour talking about taxes. There was some talk with individuals there. We were walking out about a potential for a Trump visit. You getting any smattering of that? Or is it on a need-to-know basis, and right now I don't need to know kind of thing?
You know, I am pretty confident that the president will make a visit to Minnesota this cycle. We've certainly been asking the White House for that since actually my first visit out there in July, and we ask them like every month. So they're probably sick of hearing from us. But again, you know, President Trump did so well in the state. And in certain parts of the state and congressional districts, you know, he won by double-digit margins, and we had Republicans that came very close. So we know the energy and enthusiasm for the president is high here, and him coming to visit can really help motivate those voters and get them out to the polls and help us turn the state red in November.
Jim Hagedorn, let me ask you along these lines. When you're door knocking and you're talking with potential voters, are you getting a gauge from them that they sort of understand the importance of all the different races? You know, the bigger picture of what we're looking at in terms of the potential of a I don't want to say a power grab, but just the way that we can go and put people into office that could really change the dynamic here in the state.
I think so. I think people know that, well, first of all, the folks that voted for Donald Trump, they want to see the country keep moving in the right direction, as they'd say. They didn't like those Obama policies. And down in the 1st District, we have a clear contrast. The liberal Democrats running to replace Tim Walz, who are running far to the left of him, they want to replace the president. They want to take us back to the Obama policies. I want to go a different direction, partner with them, keep moving the country in the right direction to keep us safe and make us prosperous, protect our God-given rights, and sustain agriculture. So, you know, these are like mini national elections, the 1st, the 7th, and the 8th, 3 pickup opportunities where we could take back Democrats. If we do, we can have a firewall to keep the House in Washington and help the president have a very successful 3rd and 4th year of his presidency.
The Star Tribune provides a really, at least in my opinion, an interesting barometer on how they're feeling about things. And I'm going to get into this coming up just after 8 o'clock this morning. But there's an article that they, I think it came out today or either late yesterday, where they're trying to craft this narrative that evangelical Christians are having a hard time reconciling with President Donald Trump being in the White House. And I'll work through it, but to me, it's an interesting gauge because it's one of those things where there wasn't much of a story there, but they found enough handfuls of people that they could talk to who may have some difficulty, and I can understand that, but they're trying to create like a problem where one doesn't really exist, in my opinion. And to me, I see that as a good sign. I see that as a bit of, okay, we're trying to come up with something else that we can use to sort of diminish some of the momentum that the GOP may have here in the state.
You know, it's interesting because the left still does not understand why they lost in 2016.
Right.
And so, to your point, they go and try to create narratives or stories that don't actually exist. And the fact that they're on defense and they're on their heels so early, you can tell that they're worried about this election cycle, especially in Minnesota, and they should be, because there is a big opportunity coming for Republicans, and I'm very confident in our party and our candidates that Minnesota is going to move in a very conservative direction after the vote on November 6th.
If you use the hashtag TCNT on Twitter, you'll see a post there about the annual Lincoln Reagan dinner taking place on a Friday. Also, if you go to TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com and the Justice and Drew page, there's details there. But talk about this. This is a big deal in really great event.
Yeah, we're very excited about this. This is our annual gala, if you will, that the Republican Party of Minnesota puts on every year. I call it our Republican prom. So it's a chance for all Republicans across the state of Minnesota to come together and just really celebrate what we have ahead of us and the successes behind us. So it's Friday, April 13th at the Depot in downtown Minneapolis. Our keynote speaker is U.S. Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa. She's an up-and-comer out in Washington. She's going to be incredible. All of our elected members of Congress will be there, Congressman Emmer, Paulson, and Lewis. All of our statewide candidates. We've got Lori Line, the esteemed Minnesota concert pianist, playing. It's going to be an overall fun night. And ticket sales closed today.
Okay.
We still have a few left. So if people are interested, they can visit our website at mngop.com or give the office a call up until about 4:30 today at 651-222-0022. And again, just a great night to come together with Republicans and celebrate.
Hey, Sam, just because she said it was like our prom doesn't mean that Drew and I are picking you up in a limo. I'm just letting you know that.
What?
I'm just making you aware.
I want a limo and a corsage.
Yeah, she should get the corsage.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking,
Two of them.
Yes. One for each hand. For each of
do you want one of those big ones that comes in that huge, gigantic plastic container that looks like it had like a to-go dish burger in it?
The
you know?
ones that are like super expensive? Yes.
Yes, that which of course you do.
Yes.
Let's talk a bit about Tim Pawlenty. He's going to be joining us in studio tomorrow, just after 8:00. Looking forward to having a chance to sit down and talk with him for the first time since he announced last week. We had the opportunity to talk with Keith Downey and Jeff Johnson last week. Really enjoyed all of those conversations. Look, regardless of who you're going to support. And I think if you go back and listen to the podcast on the iHeartRadio app from last week on Wednesday and Thursday with Jeff Johnson and Keith Downey, I think they would. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they would agree. You know, Tim Pawlenty throws this into the spotlight just because of the name recognition and certainly with the coverage that he received after making the announcement last week. And you know, in my opinion, that's a good thing. I like the spotlight. I like sort of putting the DFL on the defense where there is an individual here that not only is getting highlighted, but I think it also provides the opportunity for other candidates as well to get showcased in a way that maybe they wouldn't have before if it wasn't for Tim Pawlenty entering the race.
Oh, I think having the governor enter is a positive thing on all levels. You know, having more competition is always a good thing because it gives people more of a choice. So we have great candidates that have been running for the past year. They're all doing an incredible job. You know, Governor Pawlenty's now in this race, so that adds a new element. But we will come together on June 1st and 2nd in Duluth, and our delegates will decide who they want to endorse and who should be the candidate that should be representing the Republican Party of Minnesota. So we're very excited and encouraged about it. And to your point, the Democrats are on their heels in a big way. And this is just another point where they're not going to know what to do this election cycle, and it just gives us another step in the right direction.
Jim Hagedorn also joins us in studio, running for Minnesota's first congressional seat. I thought about this on the way in, and it may be a bad comparison, but I couldn't help but kind of see a bit of a comparison here. When you look at the choices that we have, the gubernatorial candidates that we have, and then you look sort of as the sort of de facto DFL candidate in Walz, it does remind me a little bit of the primary process that we went through in the election. It reminds me a little bit. And for those of you, if you go back far enough, remember we had 16, 17, 25 GOP.
Maybe 50
presidential candidates. And yet, you just kind of had Hillary Clinton there. It feels a little bit like that. And I do think that's a good thing.
Well, we were happy to elbow Tim Walz out of our race down there in the 1st District, and he's doing something different. And we have 5 or 6 good Republicans that are going to take him and the other Democrats on, and I'm sure they'll do a good job. But as far as we're concerned, we're in a good spot to take back that seat without the incumbent and those advantages of an incumbency. They've been working the district for many years, so we're excited about the race.
Now, you're a former GOP congressional aide, Treasury official, again, running for the open House seat. Story out of the Washington Post, and it dovetails a bit off of what we were talking about on Friday's show. Representative Nick Zerwas talking about these tariffs and China, and Nick was pointed out, there's some big benefits that people are going to be able to take advantage of here in Minnesota when it comes to these tariffs, but there's also going to be some difficulty for some farmers, threatening markets for soybeans, corn, and others, and here in the upper Midwest. And I know that the Washington Post article sort of highlights some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, one of the big reasons I'm running is to help sustain agriculture and our rural way of life, and nobody's going to be more pro-agriculture than me. My dad was a farmer, grew up on a farm near Truman, and live in a rural community, Blue Earth, where I was born, so it's very important. But, the president has wide powers and prerogative to go out there and negotiate deals, and he said he wanted to protect the American workers, he wanted to expand our economy, and he thinks he can reset things with China and other countries. So we have to give him that up front. In the long run, I trust that he and his administration are going to do everything they can to make sure that we have markets open for our farmers, that we can continue to produce and feed the world and have stable and upwardly trending commodity prices. That's very important to our rural economy.
If people want more information on your campaign, where can they go?
JimHagedorn.org.
Jennifer Carnahan, before we let you go this morning, we'll do a bit of a rundown on the dinner again for those that missed the details. But your role your role as the chairwoman of the GOP, it's unique because you have to represent people like me, right? But you also have to be, and I'm going to use this word measured again, you got to be measured in your responses when it comes to the nonsense you have to deal with. And there's been a lot of nonsense. First off, I want to say you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
At least from this member of the, this registered Republican. How much of that enters into your thought process? You are representative of us, but at the same time, you have to push back when you get some of the ridiculous criticism. I can't imagine that that's easy.
People have different perspectives and opinions on how things should be done. And obviously, when you're in a role of leadership, you do have to make decisions. Sometimes some of them are difficult. Sometimes some of them are less difficult, but you're never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
So my approach to this job really has been to just try to be positive, optimistic, energetic, inclusive, and build a collaborative organization from top to bottom and side to side, and just really stay focused on the key goals. Building our war chest for this election cycle, strengthening our party down to the grassroots level, supporting our candidates, and getting out a positive message. And I feel the team and I at the office, if we just stay focused on those goals, when things come our way, we just kind of try to stay above it. And again, just really focus on being positive and energetic and optimistic, because the left is so negative.
Yeah.
That if we're the party out there that's positive and championing these great values, at some point people get tired of the negativity. And so it's the same with me. I just try to block it out and stay focused on the good things and remember what we're fighting for at the end of every day.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very busy rest of the year, no doubt, but I think it's going to be a real good one. I'm encouraged, and we're hearing a lot of that. It seems as if the tone is shifting a bit, and there's some momentum on our side, and I know for me personally, I'm really, really excited about that. The annual Lincoln Reagan dinner, again, Friday, the Depot in Minneapolis. Details where people can go and get their tickets, because they're still available, correct?
Yep, still available until the end of the day today. Again, they can go to our website at mngop.com or give the office a call at 651-222-0022. And we're looking to a great night, and we've got our biggest crowd ever on hand so far. So it'll be wonderful.
Just a great opportunity to sort of relax, enjoy the evening with other fellow, conservatives and GOP members, and then, sort of get us all ready for the coming year.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see Sam with her 2 corsages walking.
That's right. I know. I really shouldn't have opened my big fat mouth. I know. I shouldn't have done that. You know what? We'll get you 2. You got to wear 1 on each hand.
I'll do it.
There you go. We'll double up.
Good.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. Jim Hagedorn, again, thank you so much for joining us, and Minnesota GOP Chairwoman Jennifer Carnahan, thank you for coming in this morning. Looking forward to Friday and seeing you on Friday as well. 651-989-5855. Coming up, we're going to get into some of the details, if you missed it, of the Jimmy Kimmel versus Sean Hannity feud. And also the details, the latest coming out of Facebook, a new controversy that's erupted with another company, much like Cambridge Analytica, that's now in the spotlight of sharing data when apparently they shouldn't have. It's all coming up on Justice and Drew.
Justice and